Hi everyone, welcome to this video, Improve Your Resume with Practical Strategies, hosted by the Dougherty County Public Library and Grow with Google on Air. Grow with Google helps people grow their skills, careers, and businesses by offering free digital skills and training tools. I'm Christina Shepard, and I'm the head of reference at the Dougherty County Public Library, and I'm so excited that you're here with us today. Today, we're going to review some strategies for making your resume more effective and to avoid major pitfalls that we can easily fall into. Together, we'll review a lot of examples and give you some practice. We'll also give you some tips on how digital tools can make resume writing so much easier. We want this to be as helpful for you as possible, so make sure to post your questions in the chat box, and I will get back to them. Don't forget, if you're sharing this video or talking about it anywhere, use the hashtag #GrowWithGoogle. Now, let's get started. Now, let's begin. We're here today to talk about resumes. First, we'll observe some resumes ourselves so that you can develop a sense of what works. Then we'll focus on 4 strategies you can use to make your resume even better. At the end of the session, you'll have a checklist of resume strategies that you can apply to make your resume more attractive to hiring managers. So let's take a minute to think about the purpose of a resume. How much time on average do you think an employer spends looking at a resume? Some people will say 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or even as much as 30 minutes. We often assume that the employer will read our resume from top to bottom, but that's rarely the case. Are you surprised to know that most recruiters and employers only spend about 7 to 10 seconds looking at a resume? Let's complete a challenge. Imagine for a moment that you're a hiring manager looking to fill a position. You know what you're looking for, but you're busy, and there are a million things on your to-do list. So you're trying to get through a large stack of resumes before lunch in 30 minutes. We'll now complete an activity to help you get a sense for how resumes make a first impression. For this activity, make sure you have a pen and a paper nearby, or you can take digital notes on your digital document for easy access. First, we'll look at the sample job description. Then I'm going to show you 6 examples of resumes. You'll have about 7 seconds to look at each resume and process it. For each one you see, write down 1 word that describes the resume, and then decide with a quick yes or no if you'd like to spend more time on it. Then we'll move on to the next resume. You can write down your word and your yes/no on a piece of paper in front of you or on a digital note. Here's the job description along with some of the skills you might be looking for. We seek a high performer to join our sales team. The successful candidate will be responsible, motivated sales associate with proven experience. This person will manage the entire sales cycle, identifying sales needs, locating and expanding new markets, designing and delivering sales presentations, and presiding over negotiations. You'll build and maintain expertise about a range of company products and services to meet or exceed personal and developmental sales goals. You'll need excellent customer service goals, an entrepreneurial worldview, business acumen, and professional sales philosophy. Keep this description in mind as we review these 6 documents. You don't need to remember all of the details. In fact, looking at resumes quickly will help you mimic what hiring managers experience as they work. The purpose is to look at resumes through the eyes of a hiring manager so that you can better craft your own. Remember, 1 adjective that describes the resume. A yes or a no, whether you want to spend more time on it. Are you ready? Here we go. Here are some strengths you may have noticed. Clear headings make it easy for employers to identify the different sections of your resume and narrow in on important areas for them. It also allows them to skim your resume more quickly. White space and wide margins are important to give the resume reader's eyes a break. Oftentimes, we reduce margin sizes and add more text when we're trying to fit all information on one page. This can make it difficult for the employers to read, which could distract them from the actual content of the resume. This resume has a good amount of white space, which improves its readability. You probably noticed that Aisha doesn't have a lot of experience in sales. She created a sales section at the top of her resume, which can be helpful for employers to get a quick overview of her skills. But most of these skills aren't relevant to the sales representative position she applied for. Be sure to build out an overview at the top of the resume that tailors your experience to the position you're seeking. Your experience section should include more details about how you acquired skills in your previous positions. But make sure you highlight the skills that are most relevant to the job you applied for. Sometimes your work experience isn't the only area of your resume where you can showcase the value of your accomplishments. Be creative. Think about certifications, awards, volunteer work, part-time jobs, and continuing education classes that make you more qualified for the position you're seeking, and include those on resumes. You probably noted that Adam's resume doesn't include any details about the responsibilities or accomplishments at his previous jobs. Don't assume that the employer reading your resume will know exactly what you did at each job based on the job title. You also don't want to miss an opportunity to highlight your successful projects, expanded responsibilities, and measurable accomplishments. There are a few different type fonts in this resume that we'll talk about in a minute, but the headers are used for each section are simple, readable language. Select font and colors that are easy to read. You may have found some of the colors in this resume distracting. Depending on your industry, it may be acceptable to use an accent color. However, too many different colors could be distracting to an employer. Also, some of the font types in this resume are difficult to read. It's best to stick to one easily readable font type throughout the resume. Depending on your geographic location, a photo included on the resume may or may not be standard practice. Some parts of South America, Asia, Africa, and Europe require candidates to include photos on resumes. Even if Titus was applying to one of the jobs in the region, he should include something more professional. You want to be sure your face is easily seen, the photo is in color, and you're wearing some professional clothing. You may have also found typos on this resume. Make sure you take time to review your resume for grammatical errors or typos to show an employer that you are detail-oriented. Always select a font type that is simple and easy to read. While Jason may have selected a legible font type, the lack of white space makes the resume as a whole difficult to read. There's no break for the eyes of the employer reading it, which can become overwhelming and distracting. You're likely multi-talented with different experiences and interests, so it's important to only include details that are relevant to the position you're applying for. Oftentimes, it's not necessary to include additional links to social media or websites. The exception may be if you're applying to a position in social media management or want to showcase your experience with your strong social media following. Also, some designers and artists may have websites showcasing their work. The most notable challenge with this resume is how difficult it is to read. Too much information or crowded text can discourage an employer from reading your resume before they even review your experience. Liana's detailed summary at the top of her resume makes it easier to quickly review the most important details of her experience. When you only have 6 to 10 seconds with an employer, a detailed summary can present the best information in the quickest and easiest way possible. You may notice that the details around each of the Liana's positions follows a specific pattern. These bullet points start with a specific action verb and are followed by a measurable detail. We'll talk more about measurable details later, but this approach showcases the proof of how you executed on specific skills. You may have found the most distracting detail of this resume to be the font choice. It is distracting, and it's difficult to read. Oftentimes, you will hold different positions during your time at one company. Instead of showing these positions as 2 separate jobs, you can combine them into one, easily showcase your promotion or change in responsibilities. You saw an example of a photo on a resume a few slides back, but that image lacked professionalism. In this case, Ibrahim has included a clear photo squared up to the camera with a smile on his face. While it may not be appropriate to include a photo on your resume, this one would be more suited for an application in a region where photos on resumes were standard practice. Ibrahim's resume is slightly more creative in nature, but that's true for his background as a graphic and web designer. While he may not be a good fit for a sales representative role, his resume has a clean, clear layout and plenty of white space. While Ibrahim's resume is easy to read, there are some obvious typos and errors that can be distracting. You may have noticed not all of the filler text was removed in the skills section. You all may have noticed some major pitfalls that hiring managers often see as they review resumes. Some of the things that detract from a good resume are the resume is too sparse or doesn't have enough information. Or on the other side, it's too crowded and it's hard to understand. Has distracting text or fonts. Or has multiple errors. So we can identify an ineffective resume in other people's work pretty quickly and pick up on some few things not to do. But how do you build a good resume? How do you make it more likely that your resume gets more than the 7-second look? How do you showcase your skills and abilities to show the employer that you're a great candidate for the job? Well, there's no one right way to write a resume. There are many different resume styles and formats that may be appropriate for the job you're applying for. Today, we'll focus on 4 key things that you can do to strengthen your resume. Choose a professional font. Highlight your skills and accomplishments. Use specific examples and measurable details. And finally, tailor your resume to fit the specific job description. We're going to start with choose a professional format. Depending on the job you're applying for, you may want to create a more traditional resume or a more creative field. You could design a more creative resume. The main thing to remember is that your resume should be professional, organized, and easy to read. Here are some key attributes to employ when creating your resume. Be sure to include wide margins and lots of white space. White space is the space on the page that isn't filled with text or graphics. Gives the reader's eyes a rest. Use simple, readable language. Use clear headlines and choose appropriate font. You may be thinking, but I don't know how to do all that. What if you don't have many design skills? Or maybe you don't feel comfortable formatting on this computer. You don't need to have design skills to create a professional resume. You can just choose from a variety of pre-built Google resume templates that have already done all that for you. Templates are like patterns that you use as a guide. They provide some design elements and formatting that you can use as a starting point for your project. They also help keep font size and styles consistent throughout your document. Google Docs offers lots of free professional resume templates to get you started. The layout, fonts, and colors are different for each template, but they all contain some basic information that you'll need for a resume. Your contact information, your skills, experience, and education, as well as accomplishments or projects you've completed. After you select a template, you can customize the document from there. To access the templates, sign into your Google account, click New, Google Docs, from Template, and choose a template you would like. After the workshop, take a look at these templates and think about one that might work best for you. Some of the templates seem to lend themselves to certain industries. You may want to check with a colleague about standard styles in your field. For example, a creative person like a graphic designer might use a more creative resume template to show off their skills even before the interview. We won't go into each template today, but feel free to explore them on your own as you put out other strategies to use. Okay, now that we've addressed what style of resume to use, let's talk about the next strategy you can use to make your resume more professional. Highlight your skills and accomplishments. Notice that it says highlight, not list. You do not need to include everything. Your resume is not a comprehensive list of all the jobs you have ever had, or even a list of all the things you've been involved in for the last decade. Your goal is to showcase the skills and accomplishments you have and to make the employer want to call you for an interview. You want to convince them that you're a good fit for the job you're applying for and that they don't need to know everything you've ever done to accomplish that. But hiring managers do want to see what skills and accomplishments that are most relevant to the job you're applying for. And they will likely also want to know the most recent work experience you have. Put the most recent work experience first. Don't be afraid to eliminate jobs from your resume that are not relevant to the one you're applying for. Your work experience list does not need to be exhaustive. It needs to highlight the skills and accomplishments that you have done and that are relevant to the job you're applying for. On the other hand, if you've done other activities like part-time jobs or volunteer work that are closely related to the job you're applying for, and you've used developed skills that would also help for that job, include those. If you need to account for a gap in work history, volunteer work can be good to show that you were active in developing your skills, even if you weren't employed. If you're starting a new career and haven't worked in the field before, examine all the job experience or life experience that you do have and make the connections where you can. Let's practice deciding which opportunities you might want to include on your resume, which you should eliminate. Imagine you're applying for the sales representative position you saw earlier and had worked these jobs in the past. Take a couple minutes to review each of these positions. Write down which jobs you would include on your resume and which you would not, and why. Also, consider what specific measurable details you might include to show that the past experience is relevant to the job you're applying for. What you should or shouldn't include on your resume is entirely subjective. Some people may have chosen to include babysitting, while others may think it doesn't apply. It all depends on the skills you use during that job and how you describe these skills afterward. If you decide not to include some jobs and experience you've had, you could save them to mention them during the interview, if you can make a connection to the job you're applying for, or you could just leave them out entirely. The main point of this exercise is to show that you can choose to include or exclude any of the jobs depending on your situation. What is key is how you describe the job and what skills you highlight. Any of these could be included in the sales representative resume. If you highlight applicable skills like responsibility, punctuality, customer service, professional attitude, dependable attendance, etc. Also, any could be excluded if you've worked in the workforce for a long time and have more professional work experience to cover, or if you mention the experiences without following relevant skills. Let's talk about some of the skills we could have pulled from each of these positions. For a wait staff position, you may have been tasked with upselling customers you were waiting on. Anything from telling them about desserts to suggesting a specific accompaniment to their meal could be viewed as an upsell activity. As a cashier, you likely engaged with customers for the majority of your workday, a skill important to sales representatives. Let's say you raised funds as part of your volunteer work. This experience could be viewed as being very similar to that of a sales representative. As a bank teller, you likely had to learn the details of every product or service the bank offered. This was a skill specifically included in the sales representative job description. Freelance blogging work could have required you to negotiate sales rates for your work with publications or clients. Negotiation skills are important in any sales position. Here's another way to use digital tools to help you organize information for your resume. Use digital documents to keep a running list of all the things you might consider under experience. That might include part-time and full-time jobs, side work you do around the neighborhood, clubs, organizations you participate in, volunteer work you do, and many other things. You can update a digital document at any time from any device that's connected to the internet. That way, when you go to write or update your resume, you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about what you did in the past. You'll have a complete list to pull from. Now let's talk about our third strategy. Maybe you have many things to include in your resume, but you don't know which ones to emphasize. How do you make those connections and show the employer that you're right for the job? By using specific examples and measurable details in the descriptions of your work experience to show that you have achieved and accomplished. This is also called showing impact. What specifically have you done, and how has it impacted your coworkers, your team, or the company? Lots of people will have words like innovative, organized, efficient leader, effective communicator on their resume. But how can you show these qualities instead of just using the phrases? One way is to use specific examples from your previous experience. Describe specific projects you worked on, improvements you made, processes you developed, or goals you obtained. Describe the quality of the work you've done in the past and show how it relates to what you can provide to the employer of the new job. The second way is to use measurable details, whenever possible, to quantify the work you did. For example, you might say that you increased sales at your current job. But what does that mean? Does it mean that you increase sales from 1 widget to 2 widgets per month, or from 1 widget to 1 million widgets? Show your impact in numbers whenever possible. This is also a great place to add any awards. Let's turn this into a practice. I'm going to show you examples of work experience. For each example, list the kind of measurable details and the specific examples that you might include if this was your resume. Think about how you can make these skill descriptions more specific, using specific examples and measurable details. You can try rewriting at least one of these descriptions yourself on a piece of paper or a digital document. It's okay to make up the examples and details for now. Here's just one example of what your resume might look like once you've added those measurable details. So instead of just managed a team, we see that they managed a team of 8 employees from new hires to 15-year company members. Not just trained new employees, but trained 15 new employees in 2 years, developed onboarding procedures and documented procedures for employees to follow. ran meetings effectively, ran weekly team meetings with up to 20 attendees. See how they added quantities, they made them measurable. Let's try another example. How could you make these skills more specific using specific examples and measurable details? It's okay to make up examples for now. Here are some ways that you might rewrite the description of your volunteer experience to give hiring managers a better perception of your work. Served over 200 shelter residents for 6 months. Obtained 2,000, prepared over 200. You get the idea. Now on to our last strategy. Tailor your resume for each job that you're applying to. Many businesses use screening software to narrow the pile of possible candidates before a manager even looks at them. These programs can scan the resumes for key words that are in the job description. If those words do not appear enough in the resume, the program determines that the person is not a good fit for the position. For human and computer resume readers, you'll be most successful when your resume matches the language of the job description. When you create a resume for a particular job, you should incorporate as many of the keywords into your past experience and work history as possible. When you describe your past experience using the same terms as the employer used in the job description, you not only get past the screening software or person, but you'll show that you paid close attention to the qualities they want in a candidate. Let's take 2 minutes to reread the job description we used earlier. Jot down a few words from the job description that you would incorporate into your resume if you were applying for this position. What are some of the words that you would incorporate into your resume? You might include words like responsible, motivated, manage sales cycle, identify sales needs, locate new markets, design and deliver sales presentations, preside over negotiations, build expertise, customer service goals, etc. Pay attention to the action verbs that are included in the job description too. In this posting, this includes identifying sales needs and delivering sales presentations. Incorporate those same action words when you describe your experience. For example, instead of saying that you sold more widgets than required, you achieved or exceeded your sales goal. The action words that are in a job description can help you shape the list for each job and to include measurable details from your past work experience. They also help your resume sound professional without sounding forced. Here we've identified some of the action verbs from the job description that you might want to incorporate into your own resume. Let's review our 4 strategies in this In this workshop, we began by looking at sample resumes to see what hiring managers look for. Then we examined 4 strategies for improving your own. Choose a professional format, try to achieve balance so your resume doesn't look too crowded, too busy, or too empty. Use a template to help with formatting. Starting with a resume template can help. Highlight your skills and experience. Include only your most relevant and recent experiences. Include specific examples and measurable details. Show your achievements and skills rather than mentioning them. Finally, tailor your resume to the job you want. Use words from the job description to impress resume screening programs and employers. You can even use these as a checklist for revising your own resume. Take a few minutes to think about what strategies seem most useful to you. There are many other digital tools that can help you with the job application process as well. We've already mentioned resume templates, but you could also use docs to keep records of past experiences and measurable details. Use Google Sheets to track every step of your application process. Or create a digital portfolio in Google Slides. Each of these projects can be accessed anywhere from Google Drive. They save automatically so you don't have to worry about losing your work, even if your computer crashes. and you can share the documents to collaborate from anywhere. At this point, we've given you several strategies and digital tips. So before we go, let's talk about next steps. We want you to leave this workshop with a clear sense of what you should do next. So here are a few ways to move forward. Review possible resume templates and choose one that suits your industry, experience, and style. Examine your current resume and find places to include specific examples and measurable details. Create a running list of experiences that you can use to tailor to your resume. Consider taking more workshops with Google, Grow with Google. We introduced a lot of different training options in this workshop. To access it all in one location, visit Grow with Google website at grow.google.com. These courses help you work, teach, and learn from anywhere. You'll find information, training resources, and more for small businesses, job seekers, and students, veterans and military families, educators, developers, and startups. This wraps up the presentation portion of today's workshop.